Speaker, and I'm honored to share my time with the member from Battle River Crowfoot. Madam Speaker, how did we get here? To a point where Canada, a nation blessed with some of the world's most ethical oil and hardest working people, cannot even get a pipeline within our own borders built without years of political trench warfare. For years, this Liberal government has fueled a culture war against Alberta, against Canada's energy workers. They have demonized the very people who power and heat our homes. They have demonized the Canadians who make it possible that the smartphones, clothing, medical equipment, and every single person in this chamber uses daily. There are pipelines beneath our feet right now in this city, in this country. Petroleum is everywhere in this room, in the microphone that I'm speaking into the chairs that we sit on, and yet the Liberals pretend that oil is some foreign enemy they play games with. Worse still, they play games with Indigenous communities and exploit First Nations as a political tool. They talk endlessly about reconciliation, but what do Indigenous communities actually get? Just more bureaucracy through the Indian Act under these Liberals, more mismanagement through entities like the negligent Indian Oil and Gas Canada office, more trust monies locked away and controlled by Ottawa. All talk with zero structural change. Standing up for First Nations is not cynicism like the Energy Minister claims this motion represents, which is, by the way, their party's own very words. Asking this government to build trust by meeting its basic responsibilities as a government is not cynicism. The Liberals claim to honor free, prior, and informed consent, but let's be honest, this is just more games and exploitation by them of Indigenous communities. Liberals are using consultation as a political shield rather than to build infrastructure that benefits all Canadians. This is just more games and exploitation. When 111 out of 129 First Nations actively participate in Trans Mountain, where are the Liberals to defend the 18 that don't participate? They don't care about the few who opposed it because to them, it's just politics of convenience for them. Liberals are set up Alberta, First Nations, and British Columbia to fail from the start. The Parliamentary Secretary said yesterday the next steps for this are the creation of a tripartite table with Alberta, BC, and the federal government. Well, again, no mention of First Nations at that table. The same people he says needs free, prior, and informed consent. They aren't serious about respect. They're not serious about UNDRIP. They're not serious about any of that. They're not honest. Just name-dropping First Nations in their public statements with no intentions to bring them to the decision-making table. Who's really dividing Canadians?
They are.
This is a government with two faces, a bipolar Bill C-5 pipeline policy one day, something completely different the next. They pick winners and losers based on politics, not prosperity. Government sets up consultation as a political tool. Consultation as a constitutional duty does not need to be political games if backed by solid relationships built beforehand. Trust, reputation, responsibility, respect, honesty, humility, wisdom is how we build pipelines that last, not endless promises that are never fulfilled, even with the best of this government's brand of consultation. Madam Speaker, Conservatives believe Canada can move at the speed of ambition again. We saw it with natural gas infrastructure. In Western Canada, we've seen 68 out of 72 First Nations and Métis communities across 3 provinces sign BCRs and community resolutions to buy critical national gas and petroleum infrastructure. This was done with great partnerships and relationships between the nations and private sector because when the right team is in place, Canadians get results. We should expect that speed when it comes to approval, regulation, and construction of pipelines. And Madam Speaker, natural resources has been a cornerstone of my family for generations. My own great-grandfather, Chief Billy Morin I, was there for Leduc No. 1 in the 1940s. He spoke on how oil and gas will fund education, housing, infrastructure, and building up of our community. He spoke about how true economic partnership reduces dependency. Our treaties commit to sharing resources and co-developing as a people, thriving with one another, not being excluded from Canada's resource economy. Indigenous peoples want to uplift our communities through resource rights with integrity, respect for the land and water, with fair share of the benefits. This is what 7th-generation thinking means, not whatever the Minister of Finance uses for virtual signaling when he's speaking about Indigenous communities. Traditional knowledge matters. Land and water stewardship matter, but First Nations are already demonstrating this every single day. They are not barriers, they are builders. This is reconciliation, not just more speeches. And yet this Liberal government is actively making our country weaker. While they block Canadian oil from reaching tidewater, the United States sails foreign flag tankers just 12 nautical miles off our west coast. They get the market, they get the jobs, they get the influence. Canada gets nothing but lectures. We should be proud of our environmental excellence. Modern technology like in-situ oil sands and SAGD extraction continues to reduce costs and emissions. We have world-leading spill prevention because of meaningful and real consultations and investments in technology and innovation and trust built by our Canadian scientists, technicians, and communities. Let's believe in them to get the job done to do this right. And for Trans Mountain, zero spills from marine shipping since operations began. Yes, TMX went from $4 billion to $30+ billion under this Liberal government, but what lessons were learned? Clearly none, because this government continues to pile on red tape, block procurement, and stand in the way of major project success. The Major Projects Office is a joke about an endless and ineffective set of bureaucracies, a bottleneck disguised as a support system. Canadians can't afford the Prime Minister's distraction that delays a new oil pipeline to the Pacific coast. Conservatives believe that unblocking and shipping 1 million barrels of oil to Asia a day at world prices will generate a stronger economy and take-home pay for our people. But the Prime Minister's Liberals continue to stand in the way of all this, promising one thing to Alberta and another thing to keep it in the ground.
I have to interrupt the honourable member. The honourable Parliament Secretary is rising on a point of order.
Speaker, they have to make reference to the Prime Minister by Prime Minister title as opposed to...
Yes, the honourable member knows that, but I believe the honourable member had corrected it.
Come on, Kevin.
Well, it is a rule, and
He corrected it. Yeah.
Just trying to throw you off.
Yeah.
Does the Prime Minister even have control of his caucus anymore?
Yeah.
Conservative will keep fighting to boost Canadian paychecks and make energy, food, and homes affordable and our economy self-reliant, secure, and sovereign. Where is the respect for those who want opportunity, for those who signed equity agreements in pipelines, for the First Nations who drilled, engineered, built, and protected the resources for generations? Where is the reconciliation in excluding them from the table? Madam Speaker, Conservatives have a path forward. Repeal the anti-resource legislations that hold Canadians back.
That's right.
End the political games that pit region against region, Canadian against Canadian.
Yep.
Approve, build nation-building pipelines, including one from Alberta to British Columbia and infrastructure from BC back to Alberta with the full participation, equity, ownership of Indigenous partners. Liberals will offer excuses. They will accuse. They will fearmonger. They will continue to divide, delay, and diminish Canada. But Conservatives will deliver. We will ensure that our workers can succeed at home, that Indigenous communities can benefit from their own lands, that Canadian energy powers the world ethically, securely, and proudly. Right. Madam Speaker, the world needs more Canada, not less. More prosperity, not poverty. More unity, not division. It's time to build. It's time to grow. It's time to get pipelines in the ground again. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Well done.
questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Indigenous and Crown Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member opposite for his speech, and I have tremendous respect for that member, not only because of his as previous being a chief of his nation, but his lived experience of the First Nations in his community. And I know that member opposite was around the First Nations chiefs last week as they gathered at AFN, and I was there with him, and I was hearing from First Nations chiefs all across this country, especially British Columbia, that said nothing should happen without their free, prior, informed consent. But when I hear the members' party opposite, they seem to think that they can ramp the legislation through for a pipeline without the consent of First Nations. So I'm asking the member, did he hear something differently? And does the member opposite agree with his party's framing that development of major projects should be rammed through without UNDRIP, free, prior, informed consent laws, and the rights entrenched in Section 35?
Honourable Member for Edmonton Northwest.
Well, I thank the member for his question, and certainly we did hear from the chiefs, and they do have concerns. But their concerns with the government and their failed consultation processes, I think the Liberal government of the last 10 years has showed that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that we've heard is that, of course, we do agree with the wording. It's right in our motion about consent with Indigenous nations. So we're not backing away from consent or consultation, or
No.
sorry, not consent, consultation. That's right in our motion. But when they talk about free and prior informed consent, right, I think they're just playing games. Yeah. When it comes to UNDRIP, when it comes to those things, where were they to defend consent on TMX for the ones that didn't agree? Apparently, it's just for some, not for all. So when they say consent, I think it's the Liberals playing games at the end of the day.
Well done.
The Honourable
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
several First Nations have indicated that they wanted us to keep the oil tanker moratorium. Even if we consult these people, at the end of the day, their decision, if they decide to keep the oil tanker moratorium, does my colleague agree that the government should require them to stop this? How would they solve the situation?
Well, again, Madam Speaker, I see the concerns. I see the concerns of First Nations who have environmental concerns. That's totally fair. And again, we're for consultation as per the wording of the motion, and 100%. But we also believe in Canadians who do that environmental protection, the scientists, the technologists who have proven time and time again. TMX has no spill since operation. Now we've got to take more risks, apparently, for the existential crisis that we're in, but these Liberals keep playing games. And so when it comes to the tanker ban, they have said they're willing to bend on that. And we completely support that. But let's not play games anymore. Let's actually do it and get this country moving at the end of the day.
Get her done.
The Honourable Member for Skeena-Buckley Valley. The Honourable Member. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I've sat here now for less than a year, and all I've listened to is Liberals lecturing us on Aboriginal issues. I mean, they're trying to teach us about what reconciliation is or Aboriginal rights and title is, and yet our ancestors helped create Section 35 and the case law. And central to that was the environment. Thank you to my honourable colleague for this, but my question to my colleague, do we need a lecture from the Liberals on what Aboriginal rights and title is all about?
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Northwest.
Well, no, we don't. You know, there's Canadian law, there's treaties that have been signed. But I think, again, Liberals typically play games with these to pit one region or people against another. Canadians and First Nations people, Indigenous people are tired of this, Madam Speaker. You know, when I was a kid, we used to do drumming in our classroom. We used to do singing in our classroom. We were taught our language. But we were also speaking and singing the Canadian national anthem at the end of the day. When I was a kid, things were different. Now it's First Nations against Canadians. It's different Canadians against other Canadians. And this is the same thing that Liberals do to keep power and control. I think First Nations and Canadians want a treaty partnership. That was the original intent of 1867, but not this pitting Canadians against Canadians anymore.
Wow, God.